Inception was released in 2010 and was directed by Christopher Nolan. The movie stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Tom Hardy, and Cillian Murphy. The movie follows a man who must share dreams with people to steal information from them in order to find his way back home. This movie is, again, another movie that I really enjoyed. I've seen it several times over the past several years, yada yada yada. And it's a movie that I chose to talk about today. I actually rewatched this movie fairly recently, and this movie, I will say, when it comes to Christopher Nolan films, a lot of his movies aren't really character studies, but this movie I think almost acts as an exception. Of course, there is the Dark Knight trilogy, which I think does a decent job of exploring Bruce Wayne. But this movie, we get into the mind of Cobb, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, as he gets the opportunity of a lifetime to possibly find a way back to his home in the United States, which he is banished from in this movie. Now, this movie has, I think, a lot of great characters. I mean, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt and DiCaprio, of course, all do a great job sharing really good camaraderie together. Elliot Page also does a great job, although I will say with that character, and this is no fault of the actor, I must add, I think the writing for Elliot Page's character is a bit. That character basically is just there to ask questions about the mechanics and how the whole dream sharing thing works, which for a Christopher Nolan movie, he generally tends to tackle, when he's going after sci-fi topics, like in the movie Tenet, they tend to be hard to follow concepts that are pretty complex. So I understand the need for having some explanation and even some exposition, but it is unfortunate that this character acts as just a way to channel that information. I will say Elliot Page's character does add quite a bit to the story. Ariadne is insightful, and she does help DiCaprio's character to get back on track. But I will say, it does come across a bit as odd, and again, this is just a problem with the script, because Ariadne doesn't really know this world of shared dreaming. She's introduced to this and is incredibly new at it. And while she does serve as a great architect throughout the story, I will say that her kind of like getting on Cobb about this stuff, while it does make sense considering the stakes here, it is just a bit odd that she, someone who doesn't know Cobb as well, is the one doing this. But I guess other characters do so as well. It's just kind of a weird thing about her character. The story here is incredibly interesting, I must say. I mean, the whole idea of shared dreaming, I mean, I know that Paprika was a big inspiration for the movie, and in that film, the whole idea of sharing dreams was explored incredibly well. In this movie, it's, I think, a less realistic approach to the weirdness of dreams, even though there are plenty of weird things, like, again, the visuals with cities folding over each other and the vast landscape set in limbo, and also the idea of having dreams within dreams is pretty mind-boggling, and I must admit it is at times hard to follow, but I do say that this movie does a fairly decent job at keeping track of things. I mean, even the characters admit that it's pretty hard to keep track of everything, like how time is affected in the real world when you go into several different dream layers, what happens when you drop into limbo, things like that. And this movie, I think, it does tread the line on becoming pretty darn confusing at certain points. I mean, fuck, this, like when you're going into like 3 or 4 dream layers, it can be a bit confusing, but I do think that after a couple rewatches and just, focusing in on the plot and whatnot, it does become much more easy to follow what's actually happening. But still, it is a little small issue there. But again, the lows in this movie are most of the time canceled out by the highs of this movie. I mean, this movie, the production is spectacular. You are fully immersed in what's going on. The music, which is made by Hans Zimmer, the soundtrack for this movie is incredible. I mean, you've seen the memes about from the songs from this movie. It's just done so well, and I think it complements the expanse, like the expansive universe that this movie seems to create. And it's just, it's a wonderful experience, really. One thing that I love about these sort of movies is when they have a concept that is fairly unique and the movie does everything it can to exploit this concept. It takes advantage of the uniqueness of the story, of the uniqueness of the plot. And this movie does a great job introducing like various different elements here, such as, what happens when someone's subconscious notices that someone else is inside of their head in their dream. pretty interesting, and it results in some kind of freaky scenes, and of course a lot of tense action moments. And that's another thing too. This movie is really an action movie. I mean, yes, it's obviously sci-fi, but there are a lot of moments where it's like different weapons, and just some really cool set pieces. For example, like when the train rips through the road about the halfway mark of the movie. I mean, again, exploiting the concept. Not many other movies can get away with doing something like that, so this movie did and does so pretty damn well. The one of my favorite scenes in the movie is the hallway scene in the hotel with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, where gravity is spinning around, and I imagine they built this hallway as like part of a set and rotated it on like some ginormous like mechanical machine. Again, the way they achieved it is done incredibly well, and even though there is like CGI in this movie, it's really like not that noticeable. It's used sparingly here and there, and of course, a lot of the practical effects make it hard to tell what is what, which I think plays well to the themes of this movie of not knowing what is real and what is not. But yeah, the story overall is tightly done. It is a little complicated here and there, especially when you start introducing, more aspects about the character of Cobb and his story with his former wife. And also, of course, when you throw that into the mix of, again, several dream layers, it can be hard to follow at times. But, I mean, even if you're not picking up at every single detail, you're still along for the ride and you're still getting a lot of kick ass moments out of this movie. Overall, I was really happy with this movie and its story. I do think that while it is at times hard to follow, this movie has some incredible moments that you don't really find in other movies. And I think from a technical aspect, this movie is incredible also, with, again, the visuals, the music, the production. Everything here is done and executed really well. Even the editing here, which for the most part is unnoticeable, which I think is a good thing. It coalesces with the pacing of this movie, which is usually pretty fast paced, and keeps things going. This movie has a steady momentum that never lets up, and it's not so much to the point to where you feel exhausted while watching this movie, but it just keeps events going and going without feeling like there's any lulls in this movie. Again, there are very little moments, if any at all, during this movie where I was bored or just straight up confused. Okay, well, there were several moments where I did feel confused. And that's, I think, my biggest gripe with this movie is there are some mechanics and things in this movie where I've seen this movie several times over the past several years. And maybe I'm just an idiot. I could be a fucking moron, honestly. I don't know. But I feel like it shouldn't be this difficult to figure out like all the mechanics and loopholes in the story here, where it feels like there are some moments where it's like, say for instance when the characters drop into limbo very briefly towards the end of the movie. Obviously, there is one character that DiCaprio's character must go after to save. Sato, I believe, is his name in the movie. And Cillian Murphy's character finds himself down here. Now, given that even if they are down here for just a minuscule amount of time, it doesn't seem like very much time has passed in the dream layer just above them. Which also, Cillian Murphy's character was shot multiple times, which caused him to descend into limbo. Sato's character, who was shot in the first dream level, he dies and drops into limbo and becomes an old man. Why doesn't the same happen to Cillian Murphy? And when Cillian Murphy's character does wake up, why is he now suddenly fine? Like, maybe I could have missed something, but it's just, I wish I spent less time worrying or wondering about these weird inconsistencies and more time just marveling at the world that this movie creates. But again, as I said before, the highs here almost cancel out the lows. Again, this isn't a perfect movie. I mean, no movie is, hence why I'll probably never give a movie a 100. But still, this was an incredible experience, and if you haven't seen this movie, I highly suggest you do so. It is 2.5 hours long. It is on the longer side, but I promise you, it earns the runtime that it has. And that's another thing I want to touch on briefly before I end this review is this movie does have a lot of setup and it has incredible payoff towards the end. It makes that setup worth it. And even there are some moments in the movie, like there is a chase scene that has almost nothing to do with dream sequences, but it does add some tension to the story and it reminds the audience of the stakes here and shows us that this character played by DiCaprio is an outlaw and is constantly on the run from various authorities and other corporations. It is just a whole lot, and I think that makes this movie incredibly exciting and energetic. It keeps everything going without letting up very often. So, Yeah, overall, I'd say to score this movie, I'd give it a 91. I think it is an excellent movie, and I think that while it does have some story beats here and there that are a bit confusing or a bit weak, I think overall, just the rest of this movie is just exceptional and does a great job with the characters and, of course, the unique mechanics that this movie presents. So, thank you all for watching. Let me know in the comments any other movies that I should review next. And yeah, hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Thanks, Peaches. Come on. Come on. Come on. I need to do it with you. I'm sorry.